Hey class, welcome back to Electromagnetics. So I wanted to take a minute on this next lecture. We've already mentioned dispersion in a previous lecture, but I wanted to expand on that a little bit and extend that to show how that affects or how it can affect our signal or our electromagnetic wave that we're trying to propagate. First, we have an inspirational thought. From 2 Corinthians 9:15, thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. And so what the scripture is talking here with the indescribable gift is eternal life and his gift of salvation to us. And so we do want to always be thankful for that and for all the many gifts he's given us as far as things we can explore in this world and in science and everything else. So this is an extension or continuation of our discussion of part 8 of this course, which is Waveguide Principles. So again, we'll be looking at dispersion and group velocity today. So we want to recall from our last lecture that along the axis of a parallel plate waveguide, we've defined this phase velocity and wavelength. And here, this is again is in the z direction. They're the apparent. When we use superposition to add these waves together, remember they're bouncing down the waveguide. So this phase velocity that we observe in the z direction is equal to the phase velocity of the actual carrier or the wave over 1 minus the cutoff divided by the frequency of this carrier wave squared and square root of that. Likewise, this wavelength of the group traveling be equal to a wavelength of our signal that's bouncing down the wave that's bouncing down the waveguide divided by, again, the same denominator. Again, where this phase velocity, again, is defined solely by the material. So whatever the permeability and permittivity is, this wave that's bouncing down the waveguide is always going to be a function of whatever's inside the waveguide. And of course, it can be free space, but we could also put some other dielectric in there. So again, and then the wavelength is this phase velocity divided by the frequency. And if we substitute back in, we see that it's just 1 over the frequency times the square root of the permeability and permittivity. We note here then that this phase velocity of propagation along the guide axis is a function of frequency. This is a big deal. So depending on what your frequency is going to determine what your phase velocity is. Well, the consequence of this characteristic of this guided wave that's propagating down our waveguide is that the field patterns of the different frequency components of a signal comprising a band of frequencies are not going to maintain the same phase relationship as they propagate down the guide. So this could be a significant issue for us. This is the phenomenon we know as dispersion. So remember we talked about before that different frequencies can travel in a medium at different phase velocities. So this is what can cause our dispersion. So an example to try to better understand this, we're going to consider a more physical example. So we're going to look at 2 infinitely long trains, okay? So we'll have train A and train B, and they're traveling parallel with spaces between the peaks. So A is going to be 50 meters and B is 90 meters respectively, and they're each going to be traveling. A is going 20 meters per second, B is going 30 meters per second respectively. So let's look at what this looks like on the next slide. So here's what we have. So again, here is our train A, and so you can see there's 50 meters between the peaks on each cart, and it's traveling at 20 meters per second. And again, this is at time 0. So this is train B. It's 90 meters in between each peak of this train, and it's traveling at 30 meters per second. So at time 0, we're going to just arbitrarily say where these 2 peaks line up. This is cart 0, cart 0. All right, so if we let 1 second go by, we see then that this cart 0 has traveled from here to here, and then this cart in the train B has traveled, that peak has gone from this original dash line to here, so they don't line up anymore, right? Well, if we let 4 seconds go by, we see what happens then is the 0 train here has traveled this distance, this 0 train of B has traveled this distance, so they're never going to line up again, but this next cart, the -1 carts of each, now line up at these peak values. So to the observer looking from the outside, it could give the illusion then that these peaks, where it started here, they became disassociated with each other, and now they line up again here. So while the real waves have traveled from this dash line to here and here, it looks like the combination of the two has only traveled from here to here, not quite as far. So again, for an observer following the movement of the two trains as a group, the group appears to have moved by a distance of 30 meters, although each individual train has traveled by 80 meters for the A train and 120 meters for the B train. So because the 0 cars lined up, and then until we moved to the -1 peaks lined up, that was only 30 meters. So this phenomenon is referred to as group velocity. So we had dispersion before, this is group velocity. So we can quantify this apparent velocity by considering these two equations here. So we've got this wavelength for the group A. We've got this distance traveled. So that's the distance where the 0 peak, between the 0 peaks lining up and the -1 peaks lining up. So that's at delta Z. And we have this phase velocity Z of the A train and the amount of time it took to do that. So now we have this lambda for the B train, again the same delta Z as we had before, and then the phase velocity in the Z direction of the B train, delta T. So now we should observe that we have two equations, two unknowns, so we can solve for this. This being the case, we solve the systems of equations. We now have the delta T is equal to the difference in the wavelengths over the difference in the phase velocities. And the distance traveled is going to be the difference in the product of the phase velocity and wavelength minus the, for A, B, minus the wavelength phase velocity for BA over these phase velocity difference. So this being the case, we can now use this to calculate the group velocity. Group velocity is going to be this delta Z, the amount of distance traveled by the group peaks over this amount of time that it takes. We plug these values in, we do a little bit of algebra, and what we find out then is this group velocity then is defined by the difference in the frequencies of the two trains or the two signals divided by the difference in the phase constants of the two signals traveling in the Z direction. So what does this look like now going from trains to waveforms? Well, let's consider this when we have this waveform up here, which will be our A. It's traveling at this phase velocity in the Z direction. This phase velocity, and this is at time equals 0. And we can see that the wavelength then from, we'll call this the right peak to this right peak. Some might say that's down peak. I don't know what, how you perceive this. But anyway, from like peak to like peak is this wavelength. Again, we have this B, which is traveling at a different phase velocity. You can see they're spread out further. And so from this wavelength, our peak to this peak, we have this new lambda. So at t equals 0, these things line up here. You see we have two peaks lining up here. Well, then at t equals some delta t, we don't know what that is, but just keeping the same phase velocities, the time when peaks will line up again arbitrarily is we have this delta z, which occurs at some delta t. So if we now have a signal that is comprised of a number of frequencies, which is almost always the case for those of you who've had communication theory, or linear systems, or signals and systems, I guess is what it's called, you know that one of the most common waveforms we deal with is square wave, because we're transmitting either ones or zeros, right? Because we're usually computers talking back and forth. But when you have a square wave, it has infinite components when we take the Fourier transform of that. So it'll have many, many different frequencies making up our signal. So in this case, then a value of a group velocity can be obtained for each pair of these frequencies. So in general, these values of group velocity will all be different. So in fact, this is the case in our parallel plate waveguide. We can see this more clearly if we plot the frequency versus the phase constant, which is defined by this equation here. So beta z, which is just 2 pi over this lambda g. We plug in values and we come up with this new value. It's the frequency times the square root of the permeability and permittivity times 1 minus the cutoff frequency over the actual frequency squared square root. So let's look at a graph for this. So here on this graph, we have frequency as our y-axis, and we have our phase constant as our x-axis. And so we see we don't have anything until we hit our cutoff frequency. So as soon as we hit our cutoff frequency, then we start to propagate this wave down the guide, and we can increase frequency. Well, as we increase this frequency, our phase constant will also increase. What we find, though, is it's not a linear relationship. It actually is this nonlinear curve. And so we see that for each corresponding frequency, we'll have a new phase constant. Well, this point where these two meet, this is our group velocity. So we can see our group velocity is this slope from the slope of the line that goes from the origin to this line. So we have our group velocity, then we have our velocity, phase velocity in the z direction. Now they will approach this slope, which is the slope of this line is a result of what material we're in. So it's the slope of this line is only the permittivity square root inverted. So we will approach this line as we continue up in frequency, but you can see we're pretty far away from it at the lower frequencies, right above our cutoff frequency. So as we can see from this, the graph, since the curve for the defining line is nonlinear, we cannot assign one phase velocity for any group of signal components. So it's just going to make things a little bit tricky. So if we have a narrow band signal, which is usually the case, we usually try to design to this, especially with a parallel plate waveguide, we notice then that our group velocity is just the difference in frequency divided by the difference or rate of change of our phase velocity. So we can now fill in for this differential can be defined by the following equation, and then using again some algebra and combine this. Similar to what we've seen before, the square root of these physical characteristics times this 1 minus fc squared over f squared square root of that, and the square root of the entire product. So now we can use this to derive an expression for our group velocity. So our group velocity, again, is equal to the rate of change of frequency over the rate of change of phase velocity. Using the equation from before, we know that this is just the phase velocity of our transmitted signal in whatever medium we're in. So we see now that we can adjust for this new phase velocity as far as the group velocity for multiple components with this equation here. And so we note then we have this overall relationship between our phase velocity in the z direction, our group velocity. This will always equal to the square of the phase velocity of our transmitted signal just in the medium. Of course, remember, it's not going in the z direction, it's bouncing back and forth at transverse angles. So what does this look like? If we were to put this on an O-scope, what would we see? So next slide, we'll look at that. So this is what you'll see, and maybe you've seen this on an oscilloscope before. So we have this envelope is what we call this dash line here. And so the frequency that we're transmitting is this much faster or higher frequency here. And so this is what's bouncing back and forth down the waveguide, right, at these transverse angles. And so since we've got one signal, remember, going at a positive slope and then one at a negative slope and positive slope, and we take the superposition of them. So the result of what we get, again, is this envelope. And so while we see the peaks between these, between our carriers, what we call this, it's much shorter. The peak between our envelope is much longer. And so this is the effect of that group velocity. And this is what we would see on an scope.